Hello, I'm Dr. Cheryl, and welcome to Wake Up with Dr. Cheryl, Wealth Transformation. Our show is raising the awareness and consciousness in the relationship with wealth and applying unconditional love. Always remember that your present situation is not your final destination. The best is yet to come by Zig Ziglar. I'd like to start with a little joke. A wise old Mother Superior from an Irish convent was dying. The nuns gathered around her bed, trying to make her comfortable. She requested some warm milk, and one of the nuns went into the kitchen to fetch it. Remembering a bottle of Irish whiskey they had received as a gift from the previous Christmas, she opened and poured a generous amount into the warm milk. When she walked back to the Mother Superior's bed, she held the glass to her lips. Mother drank a little, then a little bit more. Before they knew it, she had drunk the whole glass down to the last drop. "Mother," the nuns asked with earnest, "please give us some wisdom before you die." She raised herself up in bed with a pious look on her face and said, "Don't sell the cow." Our special guest this evening is Stuart Zimmerman. Having him as a guest is very special to me since we have wealth transformation in common. Stu has had many lives, including a few in his lifetime. He used to be so normal. He went to an Ivy League school, Cornell, as an undergrad. He graduated first in his MBA class in finance, Northeastern University. He then spent 20 years focused on an almighty dollar in the stock market and as a stockbroker, options trader, and money manager. At the peak of his financial success in the late 1990s, his wife was diagnosed with cancer that was ultimately terminal. It was clear that there was no amount of money that would give him and his family what they really wanted. This was his wake-up call, a spiritual 2x4 that slapped him upside the head. He started a journey that led to his letting go of the investment world to discover the answer to his questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is this fixation on money, wealth, and security all about? To explore these questions, he co-authored Inner Security and Infinite Wealth, Merging Self-Worth and Net Worth with Jared Rosen. He then created and hosted the nationally broadcast radio program Inside Wealth, interviewing such diverse luminaries as Deepak Chopra, Tony La Russa, and George Zimmer about their perspective on the success and world vision. More recently, he created and hosted the Inner Espresso short-form video series that translated universal wisdom into practical calls to action for business. Stu is currently a co-host of the award-winning television show Get Conscious Now, having interviewed Deepak Chopra and Reverend Michael Beckwith, among other forward-thinking leaders. His Stu's Views segment offers wit, wisdom, lightheartedness that transmits an energy of delight and possibilities for the more joyful life. Welcome, Stu.
Thank you, Cheryl.
My goodness, I know the energy here. You have all your team here, and so we have a lot of energy going with this show. And I've already done your introduction, which is fabulous.
I trust that to be the case.
Yes, and I'm very impressed with you. I read your book from the front to the back, and we are basically on the same page. A little different approach, but ultimately the same goal. So when I found that out, I thought, I've got to have you on my show. And we've got to talk.
It beats interviewing yourself, right?
Yeah, I think I'd go crazy. Anyway, so tell us who you are and where you came from.
Well,
and how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure how far back I should go. I'll try and give you the brief version of...
well, you're from New York,
50,
right?
Right, 50 plus years. So basically, kind of grew up normal, or so I thought. Jewish household, Long Island.
Oh, Long Island, not New York, but
Well, Long Island is technically part of New York.
okay.
just
Okay.
for
Well,
the
that shows you what I know, being a fourth-generation Californian.
Well, yeah. So it's all right. So anyway, I think one of the seminal moments of my life was as a teenager in the recession in '73. My father was unemployed for a period of time, and it put a lot of stress on the family. And
Boy, can I relate to that.
And at times, I could really sympathize with both my mother, who was extremely unhappy with our financial plight at the time, as well as my father feeling emasculated in a way by not providing in the manner that he wanted. And
Did your mother go back to work?
Oh, she did. She didn't mind working, but she minded having to work.
Oh.
Okay, because God bless Mom, I love you. She'd rather would have been, queen of the country club, if she had her way, And so I kind of made up my mind right there that I wasn't going to let money stand in the way of my life. So I really became focused on that's where I'm going. I'm going to make money in my life so that I'm not going to suffer that kind of, self-criticism, emasculation, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, right.
Well, of course I was wrong on that, but at the same,
at the time, you didn't know that.
At the time, yeah. Plus, everybody else kind of seemed to be going, kind of like a bunch of lemmings in the same direction,
Well, I can relate because my father was an engineer with Boeing, and he got chopped. And I'll never forget that day. I was 13, and I walked in the house, and my dad was sitting at the table, and I thought, I've never seen him, and he was emasculated the same thing. It's like he can't provide for his family. I know at that point I had to do more babysitting, and I had to do more things to bring in the money so I'd have freedom. But anyway, it affected me emotionally, and it took me years to get past that because I took it in.
Yeah. So
anyway, sorry.
So with that, I figure, when it really comes down to a career, if you like bread, you become a baker. You like money, you become a banker, or you go into the stock market field, the investment community, which is what I did. Got an MBA, undergraduate, and I got a graduate degree, got an MBA in finance back east. And then with my degrees, I came out here, go west, young man, and see what California had to offer. And I've been here for my entire adult life since then. Yeah. And within a year of my landing here, I got a job as a stockbroker.
Where?
In San Francisco.
In San Francisco.
Working for a firm that was a kind of, white, kind of blue blood firm called Kidder Peabody, or Kidding Nobody, but which is really kind of what it was. But within 4 years, it became really clear to me that the setup of the business, and God bless, I did pretty well. It was in the mid-'80s. But I realized the setup of the business was, one, I was ultimately nothing more than a glorified salesperson. And two, I was being compensated and incentivized to generate transactions, which may or may not be in the client's best interest. And that really kind of bothered me, and so I decided—
Lack of ethics.
Yeah, and I just kind of felt like I was becoming more and more kind of out of integrity and a little more and more kind of pushy, and didn't feel good. So a friend of mine had done this, and I kind of followed him, was to get a seat on the options exchange, on the options floor in San Francisco and trade options, where my compensation was going to be based on a percentage of the profits I was able to generate. So at least that way, and going forward for the rest of my time in the financial community, which was about another, 15 years almost, I always made sure that my compensation was based on a performance basis, that I only made money if my clients did, so that my my incentives were completely in alignment with theirs.
So were your other gentlemen that you worked with, or females that you worked with, did they have that same ethical integrity?
What do you mean, as a stockbroker?
Yeah, probably not.
I would say there was a mixed bag.
Yeah.
For the people who really stayed,
they played the game.
Yeah, they played the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else can they do?
Yeah. So I traded in one part of the game for another part of the game, and I traded options for 4 years, and luckily I was able to find a way to begin to leverage more of my MBA background, and start with a fledgling hedge fund, which is basically a glorified mutual fund for very wealthy people. And again, we worked on the compensation. You get paid a percentage of the profits. And with this one hedge fund, I was, as a second in line, we were able to, in the early 90s to mid-90s, ramp up really well, to the point where I was able to start my own firm. And so I ran my own hedge fund starting in 1997, and then at the peak of my financial success in the late 90s, in the midst of all the, the bubble and craziness.
Was that the first time that you were an entrepreneur?
Well, I always kind of considered that even being a stockbroker,
Well,
I considered myself an entrepreneur. I'm really working for myself
right.
in a way. And as an options trader, again, I raised some money from some of my clients from the stock brokerage days. But once again, I considered myself an entrepreneur. So,
you had that mindset anyway.
Yeah, I never really looked at, I was really working for somebody else. And so, as a hedge fund manager, at the peak of my financial success in the late 90s, my not yet wife, with whom I had child, was diagnosed, or should I say actually re-diagnosed with cancer. She was a breast cancer survivor when I met her for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
She was told she wasn't able to conceive because of the chemo and radiation from 7 years prior. And within 6 months, we had a little miracle on our hands. Who's graduating high school this June.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a beautiful boy and such a blessing to have in my life, even if I couldn't have completely scripted his arrival. So,
a miracle baby.
yes, indeed, indeed. And the toxicity of the chemo and radiation to my beloved, her name was Terry, to Terry was so horrific that I started to scramble to find alternative forms of healing. And so,
How did that go?
well, it really kind of shook me loose because I'll tell you, I mean, I thought that the contrast between making more money than I ever thought I would and not having it buy me what I expected it to buy, the happily ever after scenario, the contrast was so sharp that especially when she was so had like zero quality of life due to the chemo and the toxicity of the radiation and everything, that we actually went to Sedona, Arizona, ostensibly
Beautiful place.
ostensibly for an alternative healing for her. And I got to say, it wound up being one for me. And so very specifically, I figured, if I'm going to pay for this for my beloved and me to have an alternative healing session, which wound up being something called holotropic breathing, which I had known nothing about. But basically, it's breathing deeply and deeply and to some evocative music that puts you into an altered state.
Right.
I decided that I want my money's worth. And if I'm going to go, even though if it's a healing for her, let's see what I can heal. And so I decided to take a look at self-doubt. Because when the markets went against me, it really bothered me. And there were times where I'll admit it, I was actually crying at night if the markets went against me and I felt like I was powerless and like a turd being flushed down the bowl. And so I decided to take a look, and I knew that sense of angst ultimately had its roots in self-doubt. Because if I was really, confident in my abilities, any bad day, bad week, bad month, I mean, it just, it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
But if you have enough confidence in your abilities, you're going to be able to transcend that and, over time. And so I decided to look at self-doubt. And then, so we're in this, and my father had passed away a couple years earlier. And my father was as much of a moral compass as I had ever had. And he actually studied to be a rabbi. And and so I actually remember telling him the last thing before the last time I saw him alive, I said, Dad, the thing that really bothers me or worries me the most about your passing, because we knew he was getting real close.
Yeah. What did he die from?
Prostate cancer. Yeah. And which is another story. But for this one, I said, Dad, the thing that concerns me the most is if I need your advice, you're not going to be around to give it to me.
Yeah.
And he said, look, I don't know exactly how it works on the other side, but I will do everything in my power to give you.
Have you tapped into that?
Let's talk about
it. We'll do it on the other.
No, we'll do it right now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
please.
During this
share.
holotropic breathing, my first experience with some form of alternative healing,
Yeah.
I decide to invoke the spirit of my father to help answer this question, about self-doubt.
What a blessing, yes.
And so after I'm not sure what period of time passed in the holotropic breathing, and there's like tribal drums music with rainforest kind of water. It's like completely takes you to
Whatever.
another place.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I felt like I was a 4-year-old boy sitting in my father's lap. And I could
Love.
and I could feel his breath like on my cheek. And I literally started crying because I probably hadn't felt that physically close to him since I was that age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was ready with the question. So, Dad, where does my self-doubt come from? And he said, it's not yours.
Wow, you've
It's
taken...
mine.
Oh, wow. What a blessing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So of course I was ready for the follow-up question. Well, would you take it back?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. And so for a moment I'm just kind of laying there and nothing's happening. And I'm starting to wonder and start have doubt whether I still have self-doubt or not. You know, get a little kind of crazy there. And then all of a sudden I felt like I was hit with a lightning bolt. And my whole body started to shake. And uncontrollably, and something was going on beyond my control, and all that I know is that ever since then, you know, I've had moments of bouts of lack of confidence and self-doubt.
you're human.
Yes, and they've never been as long-lasting or never been as deep as that since. So I can thank my father for that, and that was...
So did he take it back?
I think he did. He helped to relieve some
Okay.
energetic presence
Because
that
that
I've
is-
been carrying onto in my, whether it's in my physical cells or certainly in my psyche.
That is a spiritual healing, though, you know, to do that, to ask whomever, wherever you get that from, that you ask them to take it back.
Yeah, well, I
So
wasn't
it
so
worked.
well read at the time.
No, but it
I got
worked.
lucky. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, and that kind of really put me on as a wake-up call to really take a look at, one, there's more to life than meets the eye, and two, there's still something incredibly odd and out of sync between all the money that I was making when I thought it would buy me and the reality of how much I was enjoying life.
See, this is
yeah.
a key, what you're saying right now. And I hope that this will be received to many money makers out there that just focus on that, because this is the key right here to making that transition.
Yeah. So what ultimately happened, and I got to say, even back then when times were good, we used to call the stock market the daily lie. Because we knew the CEOs weren't telling us the real truth about their companies.
Of course.
We knew the analysts at the brokerage firms, even in their recommendations, weren't telling us exactly what they knew. We knew that the investment bankers that were bringing companies public weren't giving us the straight scoop on these businesses. And we actually had some serious doubt about even the announcement of government economic indicators as being full of crap.
Manipulated.
Yeah, scripted.
Yeah.
And so when you take a look at all of that, and as I started to wake up and started to go into the deep self-inquiry of who am I? Why am I here? And what is this thing called money, wealth, and security all about? Because I'm spending all of my life
False
force on it.
security.
And it wasn't only me. It was like the brightest people in the world, worldwide, that I was in contact with, were all doing the same thing. And it drove me crazy. And it ultimately led to my unwinding the business completely, leaving the whole money management field in 2001 to focus on the kind of money and wealth that money can't buy. And so I've done stuff since then. If you want to hear about that, to let me hear, I'll be happy. So I wrote this thing,
Right.
a book called Inner Security and Infinite Wealth, Merging Self-Worth and Net Worth.
So is this when the impetus this started, was in that transition?
Yeah, that was kind of like my first act beyond a major sigh of relief.
And making it solidified within yourself and writing it.
Yes, yeah.
That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, you know, people like to teach what they need to learn, and
Yes,
I'm
I'm fully aware.
There you go, exactly. So I'm no exception. And so, yeah, I did some seminars around it as well because it really is an experience more than anything else. And then I kind of realized, you know, the book and seminar life really didn't fit my, you know, there was something other that I would to be doing. So I started a radio show for 3 years called Inside Wealth, where I focused on the kind of wealth that money can't buy. And to the extent we are exploring financial wealth, how can we create it in ways that bring out the best of who we are as human beings?
So what's your words of wisdom on that?
Well, my words of wisdom are on the whole money, wealth, and security scene is that wealth and security are nothing more than energetic states of being. And we can access them completely independently of what our net worth is doing at any given time. And money is just nothing more than energy. That's all that it is, and that is why it's called a currency.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
And so I've kind of looked into what kind of energy is money. And I'm a big fan of playing with words. And I couldn't help but notice how much of the money lexicon and jargon has to do with water. Because if you think about it, we talk about streams of income, pools of capital, liquid assets, and the properties of money are very similar to the properties of water. When you go to a pond and you look at yourself in the pond, you'll see your reflection with a little distortion. You look at yourself through the lens of money and you'll see yourself with a little distortion. So by that I mean, if you are having trust issues or insecure on some level.
Trust issues as far as what?
Well, in terms of life, in terms of trust that people like you, that you're lovable, that you're good enough or something like that. And you look at yourself through the lens of money, and let's just say you have a lot of money, you become really insecure and really not trustworthy, and you build higher gates and build higher walls. And you don't trust people to like you for who you are because they think they look at you like a red piece of meat. Yeah. So there's that. Conversely, if you are truly a giving person, one who genuinely feels like there is more than enough and it's a blessing to be alive, and you've got a lot of money to play with, congratulations. You can do some incredible good with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether it's philanthropy or whether it's investments that are
create foundations
that are socially responsible, create foundations, scholarships, what have you.
Yeah.
And so I can go on with the parallels between money and water. When water stands still over a period of time,
runs deep.
It runs deep. It also stagnates and starts to stink.
Yeah, that's
starts
right.
to stink. Money is kind of the same way. Yet when water is flowing, and very specifically flowing in a specific direction, it has a lot of force and has a lot of energy behind it to manifest and to create.
Right. And grow.
And grow, yeah. And the same thing holds true with money. If it's focused and directed and in a certain direction, it can do incredible wonders.
Yes, out to the ocean.
Out to the ocean. So, yeah, so what do you want to talk about?
Well, there's so many facets to this. There really is. But I like talking about the practical part of it so that, our audience and our viewers can really, get something out of this for themselves. People can win millions of dollars and then within 2 years it's all gone.
Oh, like a lottery or something.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And I come from the premise that it's an unconscious thing. Our relationship starts unconsciously from when we're taught from children, from however, the first time that you exchange money with your parenting, your friends, whomever that starts teaching us with money. So it's like you almost have to undo that unconscious thing because we all run on unconscious frequency on a lot of issues, relationships, money, etc. So it's undoing, like when people say, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, or I can't afford it. I hate hearing that.
Well, my little pet peeve is when you have a fabulous meal, you get the bill and someone says, what's the damage?
So, yeah, same idea.
Come on, let's celebrate the fact that we just had a fantastic meal.
Grateful. Okay, so for me, it's like being grateful for what you have, even if you don't have a lot. I mean, I've had money and I've lost it, and I'm grateful for the experiences because it's totally shifted my experience, and awareness. And I just think it starts from an unconscious level, and then when you really focus on healing that, so because there's more than enough for everybody. I mean, the last study I did, there's $8 to $10 million apiece for 7 billion of us to have in the bank account, even though that there's only like 2% that have.
Okay, the distribution's a little off right now.
Oh, geez.
Yeah,
You know?
and the real truth is that number grows every moment.
Well, the last thing
because the money supply
Right.
just continues to grow. And, I mean,
Well,
the aggregate number.
And this is something that I have a quandary over is, keep printing money. And, I'd like to get a hold on that out of DC. It's like,
Well, that's a whole nother conversation
I know,
in terms
I
of
know.
the constitutionality of a Fed that prints money that's owned by the banks.
well, it's all
It's-
started with the banks anyway,
Yeah.
back in the early 30s
Yeah.
of our, I mean, the 16th Amendment was never ratified anyway. Are you aware of the 16th Amendment with the taxation? It was never ratified, so the Social Security system was set up. I mean, this is probably rebellion talking, but, I learned about this years ago, that, Social Security was founded on 9 cartel bankers out of Jekyll Island. So it's like, they've pulled the wool over most of the population's head and on eyes on this subject.
Yeah.
And it's infuriating when I think about it, because it's not with integrity.
I hear
So-
you. But I want to get back to your point, which was about having something practical for the audience.
Yes, thank you.
And
Pulling me back here.
and to really, because ultimately, not only are we spiritual beings, energetic beings having a human experience,
Yes.
what we're talking about and what we typically look to money for, we already have complete access to
Absolutely.
now in terms of states of being. So,
Especially when you have all your needs met.
well, in a given moment, if we're alive right now, chances are the true needs are being met
Yes.
on a fundamental level in terms of air, in terms of water, in terms of hopefully
Food.
shelter, food,
Yes,
all
all
the
of it.
basics. But the specific energetic, when we talk about security, which seems to be people's baseline, and it seems to be like on the bottom of, like Maslow's pyramid. What we're really talking about is security is defined as freedom from worry.
Yes.
Yeah. So what it really is peace.
Well, and a big piece of that is trust. Trust. Don't
Yeah.
you think?
I do. And where the two go hand in hand, in a way. If you want to talk about trust, what are we trusting in exactly? Are we trusting in a higher benevolent power? Are we trusting in ourselves to be able to navigate whatever comes our way?
And if you trust in your higher self, then you do navigate and trust yourself.
Yeah.
That's
And rumor has it that there is this one thing of consciousness, whether you call it God, Spirit, Source, the universe, the unified
divine,
field,
whatever
it's called. Rumor has it that it's infinite, right? Now, if it's truly infinite, there is no place where it is not.
That's right.
That means it is inherently present in all things, in all people, in all moments, whether we're aware of it or not.
And it's wonderful when you're aware of it.
It most certainly is.
And especially when you can see it in every one of us.
So one of the practices that I have, that I use, that really seems to make a difference to me, because I can tell in how I feel in my body, because ultimately all we really are sentient beings,
Right.
and we've ascribed our sense of happiness and joy very often associated with our financial well-being. But the real truth is, if we are in fact an aspect of something infinite, then literally, and actually this is backed up in the Torah, no less, from the Old Testament days, that literally, whether you call it God or all there is, or this, whatever this infinite thing is, it literally is doing the breathing that keeps the physical body
Every
going.
breath.
Every breath.
Absolutely. So is your father talking through you right now?
I don't know. Dad didn't practice that one either. I got to tell you, I love you, Dad, but And it certainly, when I found out about that it was actually in the Torah, and that it was kind of like fine print, that they keep on going on with the service, and no one's going to practice that stuff. I almost wanted to raise my hand. Can we stop the clock right here? Can we reread that and see if we can actually do that as a practice? And so, what I'd like to invite in the audience and whoever's watching, and even myself, and you, Cheryl, how about that? Is just to really consider that the infinite really is present. That there really is something that is bigger than whoever we think we are, that is ultimately responsible for our existence.
Amen.
And even in this moment, it's very possible just to take a deep breath in and consider the very real possibility that something more than us is doing the breathing. And when I do that in a series of breaths, I start to get an involuntary smile. I start to tingle. And I just feel delicious. And to me, that's wealth.
Absolutely.
Where there is more than enough, and it's such a blessing to exist. And the thing about wealth is, in contrast to security, security can be a very individual and I don't say dormant, but even a solitary experience.
But security is also how your relationship with yourself.
Yes.
So no matter where you are in your life and what's happened to you and what's going on, if you are in alignment with yourself and your higher self, anything can happen and you're okay.
Yeah. So yes.
I've been challenged enough to know that.
I suffice it to say that everybody watching the program has been challenged fair enough.
Everybody's been,
yes.
has challenges. And
yes.
some are going through worse ones now.
Exactly.
And I mean,
exactly.
bless everybody in that respect so they can get through it.
Yeah, and still.
And be happy no matter what.
And still there's this one infinite thing going on.
Yes, absolutely.
No matter what the challenges are on an individual level.
That's right.
And to that extent, if I can be aware of that, what I notice is, on one level, I've got a deep sense of peace and a sense of security and a sense of true eternal nature of my existence that far transcends this physical body, as well as a sense of wealth, and by that I mean having a sense of abundance, that there is truly more than enough, and that the energy of wealth is one that really wants to share, because there's so much.
Yes, and when you have that in your psyche, in your mind, your emotions, that there's more than enough, fear goes out the window. Even if you're caught short a little bit in your wallet, it's like, it's okay, there's more coming.
Yeah.
There's always more coming. It's like love. It's the same thing. It's the same energy as love. It's as long as you're open, it's going to come in. If you're closed, it's not going to come in.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was wonderful for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, because my sense is, as much as we can theorize that there is something infinite going on, and we are so much more than we've been conditioned to believe we are, and capable of so much more. At the same time, we all have experiences of being solitary. We all have experiences of being alone, and at any given moment, my experience of life may differ from yours or somebody else's, right? And so there's this kind of and both situation going on here, where we are both individual and inexorably connected to each other. And so where I kind of go with it is, one, be mindful of my own energy field, where ultimately, no matter who I think I am, no matter how much of a story I can tell about all my prior experiences and resume and achievements and all the rest, and roles that I play in life, I know first and foremost I'm an aspect of something infinite that is just vibrating around and passing around in this meat suit for a limited time only.
And when you have that awareness, it's so much easier to stay out of your unhealthy ego. I mean, you can let go of your ego. I mean, we all have egos, but I have found that when you're in your ego, it's harder to penetrate that oneness with spirit.
Yeah, I've been kind of playing with that one too, kind of wondering, what is this ego thing, And I'm kind of landing on it as being kind of like stained glass, where we're not the glass, we're the light behind it. And the ego is actually what we show to the outer world that can really be beautiful when it's integrated. If we think we're something outside of the light, that's when we start having problems. But when, I'm just saying.
No, I mean, it makes sense because your ego can fool you. It can be illusional.
Well, it's very
delusional.
Well, it's easy to take ourselves seriously.
Too easy.
Right? It happens every now and then. We buy our own BS, And as we continue to do practices that really invite in the ultimate nature of our reality, whether it's through meditation, through some other forms of somatic exercises that can involve not only breathing, but movement.
Painting, writing, whatever.
Right, just allowing for that divine, literally divine creativity to come through in the ways that it does. We begin to realize that there is something bigger than who we think we are at work, and therefore, and that as vibrational beings, we can pay more and more attention to our vibrational state. And the more we do that, we get to take a look at, one of my favorite bumper stickers in life is, don't believe everything you think. Right?
Yes.
Because so many of these thoughts are literally like mental boogers, where, it's like, what, I'm not good enough? Whose was that? It was not mine. That one is not an original thought. Somebody else way back when had the same thought and has been circulating through the universe. It's kind of like, a piece of lint sticking to you or something. It's not who we are. But yet we have a habit of believing that if it comes into our mind, it must be true. And instead, what I'm tending to notice is how I am energetically. And then as the thoughts come up, I notice which thoughts bring my energy lower or feeling more contracted, and which ones are more expansive. And the ones that are starting to contract, that make me feel more contracted, you know what? I feel like it's not the only thought in town.
So you're listening to your body.
Listening to my body.
I mean, I think, we're not taught in this society to do that.
Yeah.
And if we did, that's something I'm still mastering, is listening to your body, because your body won't lie to you.
Well, I just threw my back 9 days ago, so what do I know?
Oh,
but it's coming back. My back is being thrown back in. And I feel very grateful for it. But,
I can relate.
I think we're all works in progress.
Of course.
And especially...
We never stop growing.
Well, that's the whole thing. If we are in aspects of something infinite...
If I stop growing, say goodbye. As far as I'm concerned, I wanted to grow until I'm on my last breath.
Okay. And something tells me you will. maybe even beyond that. Because we are, if we are something more than our physical bodies, which we are, then we are naturally ever growing and ever expanding. And there's always more to learn, to experience, to share.
And as long as you're open to that, as long as you're open to that, because some people aren't, they're afraid of it. They're fearful of it,
So let's make it as contagious and fun as possible.
Yes.
That way.
Because you know what? Ultimately, it's freedom.
Yeah.
It's freeing. It's freedom.
And it's fun.
And
Because some people actually are a little, they'd rather be with the devil that they know than the angel that they don't. And it's, this whole notion of freedom out there, it's a nice platitude when it comes to something written a few hundred years ago, not well practiced. Okay, even by our politicians and people who run our country.
Oh please!
Okay,
don't get me on that subject.
Okay.
Oh my God!
All right, we're just kind of moving it through. But
just gets me.
The point is that as another quote out there, with freedom comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
And so to truly be in a free state means that we have great responsibility to our awareness and to our state of presence in each moment. And we're humans, so we get to have our moments of forgetfulness. And as far as I'm concerned, the greatest gift we can offer each other and anybody is to remind each other who we really are.
Absolutely. And hold that best for that other person or other people.
Yes.
Is to hold that best.
Yeah.
To be the best you can be.
Yeah.
Yes. Does anyone have any questions or comments out there?
Well, we answered everything?
Bill, yes.
I've got a question to do with the cycles of money. And do you believe that it's possible to sort of defeat somehow the cyclical ups? In my own life, I've just experienced, times of abundance and times of not so much abundance and so forth. And in financial stuff, they teach some of these things are cycles, right? And a lot of the earth seems to revolve around that, the dark and the light and the high tide and low tide and all that business.
In my experience, that's like one of the key words. And I know we have a little different background. I mean, I've been a financial management in the corporate world, and then I had my own accounting practice. And it is cyclical. It is. I mean, that's my experience with it.
Yeah.
And it's something I learned a long time. It's not something, I mean, sometimes it'll grow super abundantly, and then, it'll come, and I don't quite have an answer to that. Maybe Stu, you?
I actually do have an answer to that, and it may even be correct. I don't know. Truly, as money is energy, and what energy does is it oscillates, it modulates in kind of a sine wave type of fashion. So it naturally has highs and lows, just like we do during the course of the day, whether you call them circadian rhythms or what have you. And sometimes our lows are due nothing more to low blood sugar, or sometimes it could be one of those, self-deprecating thoughts. And so to answer your question, I do think that economics and financial flow, on one level, is cyclical. And it will have highs and lows. However, with a sense of consciousness, we can take what appears to be a kind of a flat rolling kind of up and down and start to tilt the angle a little bit, so that we have higher highs and higher lows, which is the ultimate definition of a bull market, a series of higher highs and higher lows. And we can actually have that in our lives energetically as we continue to expand and continue to evolve and continue to open our hearts and minds to just the magnificence that we get to exist. And the more we get into that frame of mind as a group, in a collective,
yes. And that's key.
That's when the, as you mentioned, all the money per capita that is available on the planet right now gets to be redistributed and reallocated in ways that will help to make that turning of the cyclicality more apparent. So even the dips will seem higher than the prior highs.
And with that statistics that I mentioned earlier, is what blows me away is I think the babies in Africa and India could have that money that are starving over there, and it's just lack of education. Even as spiritual as India is, there's lack of education.
And ultimately, it's lack of will. And the real will is for the people who have the money right now. If they really want to cure world hunger, if they really want to cure clean water around the world.
Are you kidding? They wanted to eliminate population.
Well, I guess that's one way to have everybody with clean water is kill half the people who don't.
No, I mean, I've done research on this. I don't like the reality of that. But
in no different than Kennedy, JFK, in the early 60s saying, we're putting a man on the moon in a decade. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we have the will to do it, and we're going to do it, and we're going to figure it out. I just don't know how. Here's the money. Get to it, NASA. Yeah. It's no different than doing the same thing with clean water around the world right now. Or food that's locally grown everywhere where there's hunger. We could eradicate all of that worldwide, literally like that, and all that is really needed is will. And that actually is the first chapter of the book. Don't mean to be pat myself on the back. But it really is to have that sense of burning desire for an outcome, and really.
Well, now we're talking about ethics and integrity too, and having compassion. I think a lot of the men, and they're mostly men. There are billionaire women, and of course Oprah's a good example of being, compassionate. But a lot of them, yes, they give away, but they also do it for manipulative purposes. So that's where I draw the line. But you know, it's, what do you do? I mean,
Well, it's like
we
no-
have to keep educating.
Yeah, and once again,
We,
it's
the people, have to work together on
and
this.
I want to use Kennedy as an example again, because you know what his motivation was for starting the whole space program?
What was that?
He said, you know, America needs a dream.
Yeah,
America needs to raise the bar to a higher standard.
yeah.
And that's what it was. And I would offer for the powers that be, whether it's our government or whether it's a handful of multi-billionaires, and you know who you are out there. You may not be watching the show yet, but hopefully you will soon. You know, they could make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
They could settle for nothing less
I know.
if they really chose to, and really chose for that to be their mark in this lifetime.
And the multi-millionaires and billionaire that I've known are spiritually bankrupt. So, you know, it's like, how can they get it? You know, through losing money? You know,
Well,
I mean,
people find it in the strangest of places. I mean, something happens that can rock their world. A loved one gets ill. Perhaps they get ill, and they, you know. Tom Shadyac. You heard of Tom Shadyac? Tom Shadyac
recognize
was
the
the
name.
director of all of these ridiculously inane Jim Carrey movies. Okay? He had 6 homes, estates, whatever, private jet, all the rest, making money off of drivel. Avid bicyclist, he's in a car accident. He gets hit by a car and starts getting a significant concussion. And he's done a little research on the not only was his having all the symptoms of sensitivity to light and hearing things and loss of balance and really having a lot of concussion type symptoms, and he noticed that one of a commonplace symptoms of concussions is suicide.
Wow. Yeah.
And he decided that if he may very well succumb to suicide because his quality of life was going to be so poor, and he decided to make a movie to be his legacy if he was going to go that route. And he wound up making a movie called I Am. And it was all about consciousness. It was all about awakening.
Wow.
And so here's a guy who was a mover
Yeah,
and shaker,
right.
multi-millionaire. He had an awakening. And it took him, I'm not saying to be brought to his deathbed,
No, yeah,
but to,
right.
have his cage
Well,
rattled.
As
And
long as it works.
well, yeah, and the same thing with me. I mean, I was pretty thick also, so I had to have my spiritual 2x4 upside the head,
Yeah.
with my beloved's illness to really wake me up.
Yeah. My goodness. Would anyone want to have any comments besides? Oh, please, because we're running out of time already.
It strikes me that this is a great conversation on the topic of the lotus growing out of the mud. The mud being the collective past consciousness, historical consciousness, and the lotus being the awakening to the divinity that's within everyone. And
Yes.
and so and then the word will jumped out at me, because at the end of the day, it strikes me that after one has a bit of an awakening, then it's like, I want more, and that's where the will comes in. So as these billionaires and as these pieces of the collective consciousness of the past get a taste of an awakening, then it's just going to radiate out. And I really do get that we're in the midst of this awakening.
We're in a wonderful time and era in our life because it is happening.
Yeah, and this very topic, people are going to hear it, and it's just what the doctor ordered, and the doctor being the big doctor, of course.
And of course, one analogy that I like to use is the oyster, and how. And Dr. Beckwith says the rub. Well, the friction of the sand in the oyster creates the beautiful pearl. So I like to use that as our spiritual awakening, because we don't grow unless we have friction or challenge. And it's just the way it is. So it's happening.
Right on.
And the word you used was radiance. And that goes great with will, actually, because ultimately all we're talking about is vibrational presence, a sense of delight, a sense of recognition of our aspect of something greater, our sense of gratitude that we all get to play around in this form on this beautiful host planet of ours. And to that extent, the more and more people who are in that energetic field and presence, it becomes when Harry met Sally moment. I want what she's having. And all the people, God bless them, the billionaires who may be morally, not morally, but whatever bankrupt they are, spiritually bankrupt, you know what? They're going to start to notice, hey, why is everybody else having such a great time? And I am burdened by all my money.
Right on, right.
Bill Gates, hello.
And real quick, since this is going out to the airwaves, the easy way in my mind is simply to have everyone that I see, to see them as divine, like consciously see them as divine, and that radiates out. So that changes the collective.
When you see yourself as divine, then it's so much easier to see others as divine.
Indeed.
Oh my goodness.
What?
Time.
Time. Okay.
What's this? Oh,
Is there room for one more?
David, you have a question. It's okay, we can go over.
No, I just,
I did my monologue was pretty short, so I could accommodate this.
So the comment and that I want to just say is that I'm in total alignment with what is being spoken here, and I live my life by this. And the key that I want to share is that what goes along with the abundance and wanting to just naturally share with everybody whatever you have, whether it's a lot or a little, it doesn't matter, it's the cycles, is that to always remember to come from a place of gratitude.
Absolutely.
And when you have the attitude of gratitude, there's no suffering, there's no pain, there's no fear. And so the practice that I do that I'll pass on, if this makes it into the tape, is that when you do a practice daily, or when you remember to do a breath, to tap into source at whatever that's called, is to just breathe in and remember to feel grateful for your life, for all your relations, and for whatever level of abundance you have. You're living, you're breathing, you have a roof over your head, you're not in India in a little cardboard box, and those people feel gratitude. They are very spiritual that live on the street. So the attitude of gratitude is the key for me.
Absolutely. My practice daily for 20 plus years, the first thing before I even get out of bed in the morning is gratitude. That's the very first thing I do. And then I pray and meditate for all the people in my life and all the people on this planet. And then I align myself with acupressure with my body. And I've been doing that for years, and it keeps me in tune.
Same for me.
Not all the time, but
Yeah. It's interesting. When I mention that breath about something greater than me doing the breathing, what I notice is, and I really get this authentic sensation that the creator who's doing the breathing is very pleased with its creation and has a deep sense of gratitude with its own imagination. I'm just saying.
Oh, goodness. Thank you so much for coming. And
Thank you, Cheryl.
And thank you for coming
Yeah.
and being such a wonderful
Thank you.
audience.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amen.
Okay. So is that a wrap?
Yeah, that's a wrap.
Okay.
We're about 4 minutes over, or 5
Okay.
minutes over, which is no big deal. Self-discipline is a form of freedom. Freedom from laziness and lethargy. Freedom from the expectations and demands of others. Freedom from weakness and fear and doubt by H.A. Dorfman, American Mental Skills Coach. Remember the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. Wealth is the ability to fully experience life by Henry David Thoreau. Never give up. First be aware and conscious of your thoughts and catch yourself before they come out of your mouth, especially the negative thoughts into words. It takes being sedulous, persevering, and disciplined. Be grateful for where you've come from and what you have, and be grateful for your freedom and eat healthy. Good nutrition feeds your mind and your body temple, and don't forget to exercise. Feed your spirituality with meditation and prayer. Thank Spirit. Love yourself unconditionally. Stop criticizing, stop judging, and allowing others to dominate the way you feel and think about yourself. Be compassionate and share your abundance and wealth with others. When fear knocks, let faith answer the door. Thank you, Marin TV, for facilitating our show, and especially to my crew, Brad, Ginger, and maybe Guy. Please support and become a member of Marin TV. Bye for now. Until next time.